lovely people. How are you doing? Everything fine? So here we are, like every Thursday, to listen to me a bit and to listen my fanfiction about Harry. Tonight we will read just two chapters because one of them is quite long, and they're just gonna be two, but very intense. And as usual, I should inform you that those chapters are uploaded on my website, which is www.scribblingaloud.wordpress.com. You find them on portals too. I publish on Archive of Our Own and fanfiction.net. So you can find them there. And you can follow me on Instagram if you want, Scribbling Aloud. I don't do much, but I usually give update about my life. And what else? Getting back to our chapters. So, as I was saying, they are going to be quite intense and overall quite taxing on my throat because there is a lot of talking, and the talking is done from James and Harry mostly. And especially James one is a very difficult voice to make. So yeah, I might get sip of tea here and there, even during the chapter, just to smoothen my throat a bit. Yeah, we are getting to the end of the book. I'm quite excited to say that. So there is going to be this week, next week, and the one after that, and then the second book is going to be done. I'm very proud of myself. I never thought I could get up to this point. Probably should do a bit of recap of where we left our characters. So, in the last chapters we read, we realized that Lily's birthday is coming closer, and we actually got to that day, and Harry's feelings were very deep and not handled very well, like usual. But fortunately for him, besides Hermione, he has got another very, very good friend, which is Luna. And Luna, with her simple and quirky way, managed to help him to handle those emotions, simply crying, which is something that nobody ever taught him to do. He never felt allowed to do. And that's why he has got so many problem of anger, just because this is what I think, obviously, my personal opinion, just because he never had the chance to channel his emotions in the right way. So we left him crying and healed, and they are getting back at home where there is Ginny, Albus, and James. So I guess we can just start and see what is going to happen in these two chapters. Sorry for the noise I'm about to make. Okay. Chapter 30. Chapter 40. I hate you. When Ginny saw them at the door, didn't know if to be more baffled by Luna's presence, Harry's serene demeanor, or the state of him. The last one was the winner. Harry, what in the name of heaven did you do? You are covered in mud, she exclaimed, and as he was advancing inside, she barred him the path, yelling, Don't move another step! I passed them up this morning! And turning to Luna, with a somewhat sweeter tone of voice, Hi, Luna. So glad to see you. Sit in the kitchen and make yourself at home. I'll be with you in a minute. She closed the door behind her and sternly made Harry pile all the sopping clothes to the entrance, ordering him to the bathroom to take a hot shower. When after a few minutes she emerged in it with warm, clean clothes, Harry was toweling his hair. She led them beside the sink, and without a word, hastily, she was about to leave the room again. Stop a second, he said, noticing her hurry, grasping her wrist before she could disappear. Come here, he ordered her. She tried to free herself without meeting his gaze, mumbling her unwillingness of leaving Luna alone. She can wait, he answered resolute, pulling her inside and closing the door. Look at me, he entreated gently, caressing her face. She raised on him two gold eyes that teared up immediately in spite of her. Shrugging at his hand, she mopped them up angrily. Harry, moved, tried to cuddle her, but she avoided his hand. You have been mean, she reproached him. I know. You shunned me! Tears starting to glide on her cheeks, notwithstanding her effort to stop them from falling. I know. I'm suffering as much as you know. I'm suffering as much as you know. She was my daughter too, you know. She muttered, avoiding another attempt from Harry to caress her. I know. I'm a bloody bastard who doesn't deserve an angel as you are on his side, he said, hugging her as tight as the baby allowed, despite her struggle to free herself. But you made the huge mistake of marrying me, so now you must bear with me and keep me, he added, kissing her frowning face. She received the kiss stiffly. Therefore, Harry kept covering her with them until the stiffness melted in a chuckle and then in a sniff. Hello, Marco. I'm sorry, he continued. I promise you it won't happen again. And he truly hoped that it wasn't a vain promise. He would never have revealed what had cured him, and he was sure as well he would never allowed it to happen in her presence. Once had been enough. But he knew now there was another way to channel his grief. It wasn't easy. For him to cry was much more difficult and painful than a fit of anger, no matter how strong it was. But he had witnessed how this latter seriously endangered his relationship with Ginny and the kids, and he wasn't willing to let it happen any longer. She nodded. I hope so. Otherwise, next time I'll show you what we angels are capable of, she said, scowling playfully, untangling from his embrace. And I want to find this bathroom as clean as when you enter it. You left mud everywhere. And with that sentence, she left him there, smirking. When he joined her, she and Luna were chatting gaily over a cup of fuming tea. Albus was there too, picking suspiciously from a plate of sweets Luna had brought them. He had some unpleasant experiences with Luna's cooking, but his gluttony made him bold. James was closed in his room, and Harry, feeling calm and composed enough, took the resolution of talking to him as soon as Luna was gone. He was the moment to confront him and try to repair his past mistakes. They passed as cheerful an afternoon with Luna as Harry never thought possible, considering the mood they were all in just a few hours before. Luna had the power to bring serenity wherever she went. He tried to forget about what he could have been that day in favor of what he was, and judging by Ginny and Albus' smiles listening to Luna's anecdote, they were doing the same. As soon as she was gone, Harry was knocking on James' door after having communicated his intention to Ginny, who looked grave in hearing it. James was lying on his bed playing with the snitch, letting it fly a few inches and catching it again, just as his teenage father had done the only time he had seen him in the pensive. His expression was unreadable. Harry took the desk chair and sat on it. How are you? He asked conciliatory. James shrugged his shoulders and didn't answer. Not a good start. Laura was here. Why didn't you come to say hi? He shrugged his shoulders again, keeping play with the tiny golden snitch. It wasn't nice of you, you know. James, catching the snitch, looked at him sourly for a moment, arching his eyebrows, and then resumed his game. What that expression supposed to mean? Harry asked, ready for whatever unpleasant might come out from his son's mouth. Nothing. It's just a bit rich coming from you. What do you mean? Mum cried the whole morning. She was closed in the bathroom by a hoarder. He paused while the tiny snitch was making a bolt for freedom, and catching him yet again, continued in a snide remark. You were nowhere to be seen, like usual. That wasn't nice either. Harry sighed, sitting back against the chair. You are right. It wasn't nice of me. James didn't seem inclined in making any other statement, so Harry pressed him on. James, can we talk? If you have something to say, this is the moment. Take it out of your system and let's be done with it. But James kept his silence, studying the gold snake that was flapping, acting the long thin wings. Is it for what happened on Christmas? I explained you the reason of my behavior and I apologized, but we can talk about it once more if you want. He pressed on, but not receiving any answer, he tried again. He wasn't going to leave that room without having told everything over. He was ready to badger him the whole night if necessary. Is it because of the baby? Or something else? Is it because you are bored? Do you want us to bring you to Bianca? I don't want to see her again, he said in a rush, angrily. Finally, he can speak then. Why? James rolled his eyes annoyed. Okay, do you want to know why? Do you want to talk? He asked, shoving the snitch under the pillow and looking at him scornfully. Yes, that's exactly what I want, Harry answered stern, ready for the blow surely about to come. Fine, he said, sitting up. Do you know what happened when I went there? Glowering at him. She just talked about you the whole sodding day, begging me to make you sign things and asking questions about you, and the same her mother, and the same her sister, and Francis the same. Since he met you, it seems he's not able to talk about anything else. And I'm bloody fed up with people looking for me just for the sake of hearing about you. And by the way, have you got any idea how embarrassing is it to realize that even the force here know about you more than I ever did? I must find out things about my own father through stratagem, not to let people see I don't know anything. And since you are so keen to talk, let me tell you as well that I'm also bloody fed up to be just a shade of you. Everybody expect from me grand things, but whatever I do is never enough compared of what you have done. Whatever I do, it will never be enough. It's just gonna be a you, and I'm gonna be always only Harry Potter's son, a nameless, worthless person that is unlucky enough to be born your son. He was standing up now, his face contorted with rage, while Harry was assisting, astounded by this outburst. And because you are who you are, I have to protect Albus and I have to protect Rose, and you don't care about what we must face at school as long as you can have your own way. You, deci- you decided to have this child so you can replace Lily, and you can forget about us again, the same way as when Lily was born. He spat in rage, angry tears sprouting from his eyes. No, better, Not us, but me, because you care about Albus. You like him. The only one you do care about is me. James, that's not. Harry tried to interrupt him, bewilderment growing, but James didn't let him finish. Yes, it is. Stop pretending it is not. It was Lily first, Albus now, and then it will be this child. He shouted, slamming his hand hardly against the wall, and Harry recognized at that moment himself in his behavior, all those repressed sentiments bursting out in a wild anger. Do you know what? He shouted, looking at him again. I want a different father. A father that hasn't done any amazing stuff. A father that didn't save the world. A normal one. I'm fed up with all of this. And with all that resentment and spite that mounted in him, he yelled harshly, I hate you! I wish I wasn't your son! I hate you! Harry was appalled, speechless under this flood of unsuspected hatred, the last sentence cutting deeply into him. James was drying up nervous tears from his red and enraged face. He didn't add a word more. He crouched on the bed, giving him his back. Harry looked at his shoulders quivering and was at loss for what to say, his mind dazed by those rough words. James, he muttered, standing up, not knowing how to proceed. He walked 2 steps toward him, but James interjected sharply. Leave me alone! Harry tried again. I think we should. But James interrupted him, raising his voice. I want to be left alone! Okay, all right, Harry said, giving up. It didn't seem right to force him into a discussion right then. I'll leave you alone, he only added, leaving the room and closing the door behind him. Ginny was standing just outside, her expression grave. Did you hear? Harry asked, subdued. She nodded. It doesn't hate you, really, you know. It's probably too much of the opposite, she said, comforting. Harry only nodded, going for the room. Ginny made to follow, but Harry held there. I'd like to stay alone, if you don't mind. And that was the end of chapter 40. And so, what we know from the beginning that was going to happen, it finally happened. Well, this sentence, like, I hate you, I was expecting since the beginning I started writing this book. Actually, when I started to write this trilogy, I didn't have the whole book in mind. I didn't know how it's gonna develop, what was going to happen. I didn't know basically anything when I started to write. And usually for each of the book, I had just an image in my mind of something, and this sentence, this moment, this chapter, and the next was it. So I wrote the whole book to get to this point, basically. So I guess we can keep going and see if and how Harry will manage to fix this situation. I'm glad I'm here at the right time then. Oh, Marco, sweetie pie. Okay. I guess we can start with chapter 41. This chapter is very long, and well, you will be able to give me your opinion if you like it or not, because I tried to do something and I want to know if I succeeded. So, chapter 41. It was not amazing. Harry lay on the bed, lost in his reflections. What James said had struck him deeply. He knew or divined already some of his afflictions, but what really disconcerted him was the anger, the resentment in his demeanor. He knew that James didn't hate him really, but it was nevertheless disturbing to hear that sentence from a son, spat with such defiance. He was wrong all over again. All that feeling in being overshadowed and not loved by his family. He was exactly wrong. And that thought scared him enormously. When at Hogwarts, it had started all innocent and slight. It was scarcely discernible from an outsider. Harry had had many hints of it during the years, but the final proof had come from the Slytherin locket. The Horcrux, when opened, had revealed all that tormented Ron, but he had never suspected how strongly the rancor had been fed and harbored even later, year after year, until Christmas, when he had poured out unexpectedly, bringing those nefarious consequences. And it was happening again, under his very eyes. Harry had never been able to explain to Ron how misplaced his envy was, how absolutely awful had been every event of his life related to Voldemort, and how happy he would have been to be spared of everything that Voldemort's connection comported in his life. He had killed his parents, forcing him in a joyless childhood, made his life a sequence of losses, fears, and struggles. His situation hadn't brought him any joy whatsoever, only misery. But then, with James and Albus, he had never even tried to explain. They learned from other people's mouth what his life had been, and it always sounded so great and adventurous when told by somebody else, and it had been so awful to leave it all. He had promised himself to be open after Christmas, to answer their question and be more transparent, but he had found it more difficult than suspected. He hadn't been able to maintain his promise. He was in time to rectify the situation, however. He ought to avoid this thing to become the gnawing sentiment that had corroded his and Ron's friendship. He didn't want to lose his son, how he had lost him. The poor kid felt neglected, and he hadn't even realized. He had struggled in all his path of parenthood against it because of what he had suffered as a child, and it happened anyway. His love for Lily had made him blind to James' silent plea for attention. But he wasn't going to lose his son under this misconception. He was the time to put aside completely secrecy and get close to him. Hermione had been right telling him what she did a month before about all this unwillingness of speaking about himself. He could hear her now with clarity. You are only keeping them far from you. She had been right. I'm keeping James and Albus far from me. How come women are always right? I'll eventually learn this truth too. The thought of James, closed in his room, feeling neglected, acted in him like a stimulant. God knows if he knew what it meant with the childhood he had, and it was dreadful. I'm sorry. I'm not gonna let it happen to my son, too. And that thought gave him the strength to act. A resolution sprouted in him. Now was the moment to make amends. He sprang up from the bed, driven by this decision, and steadfast walked toward James' room. He didn't knock. He just slammed the door open. James was still on the bed, and seeing him enter in such a manner, startled, his face darkening straight away. But Harry didn't let him speak. Come with me, he just said. James opened his mouth to utter a negative, but Harry didn't allow him to. He just repeated the order, articulating every word imperatively. James rose from the bed sullen and followed him. Harry, on the spur of the moment, went to look for Albus too. If he was going to do this, he wanted to do it just once. Albus was in the living room, polishing his broom. He called his attention, asking him to follow. Albus, seeing his severe demeanor, dropped his broom instantly and made to go to him. Ginny was there too, sitting on the sofa. She looked at Harry inquiringly, who said to her, "Ginny, I need to speak with the boys alone." She nodded grave, ready to stand up. "Stay," he said, caressing her head to reassure her. "We'll go to the kitchen." Albus followed him meekly, while James had still anger gripping on him. Once in there, he pointed at the chairs. "Sit down," he told them. "I don't want sit," Harry ordered to James, that complied. Harry was walking back and forth in the kitchen pensively, his brows knitted, his mind overcrowded with all he wanted to explain. He gathered all his strength and started to speak. "You often complained I never told you anything about me. Now I'm gonna do it. I'll tell you everything from the beginning, and you are going to listen carefully because I'm not sure I'll be able to do it again in future." "I don't want," James interjected, scornful, and Harry, losing his passions, shouted, "James, you shut your mouth and you listen. It costs me to do all this, but I think it's necessary since what I heard from you today." James, who was rising from his chair, sat down again, glowering. "Right," he said, halting, and observed both his sons, moving his gaze from Albus, slightly frightened, to the other son of him, arms crossed, forbiddingly looking away. "I cannot remember neither my mother nor my father," he started in saying. "When I was 1 year old, a family friend broke the Fidelius charm over the house we were living in, allowing entrance to Voldemort." He saw both his boys flinching, James fidgeting uneasy at the mention of the breaking of the Fidelius charm. "He killed my dad first, and then my mother, who was trying to protect me. She screamed and begged him, but she killed her mercilessly anyway. I heard her scream more than once when the mentors were close to me, and I promise you, it is beyond horrible to hear your mother screaming terrified just before she's about to be killed." Albus widened his eyes, glued on Harry. James winced, but still looked somewhere else, pretending not to hear. "He tried to kill me, and he couldn't. Thanks to that, I got this damn scar," he said, moving his hair from his forehead so it was very visible to them. "The scar everybody's gaping at. I got it because a dark wizard used the Avada on my parents and on me." Albus lowered his gaze on the table. "An event that created a twisted sick connection between our minds, giving him access to mine, and the other way around." Albus startled and opened his mouth as to ask something, but Harry was already continuing his tale. "I've been brought to my uncle and aunt then," he said, pausing a moment, reflecting. "Do you know the closet in our place, the one under the stair where we keep your Hogwarts trunks? The one is even too small to keep them both?" he asked. Albus nodded feebly, while James was struggling not to betray any interest in the narration. "That was my room until I was 11." He admitted with consternation he remembered it. My relatives, the only people I had in the world, showed me only cruelty and unkindness the 17 years I spent with them. I never had toys or proper new clothes or anything of my own. Their son, who bullied me, beat me, and prevented me to make any friends, had everything he wished and more. But that was the least, he said, getting warmer at the injustice of that behavior toward him, and, like usual, amazed in realizing how miserable his childhood had been compared to his son's and others' children's. I never had a kind word or encouragement. I was only shunned, insulted, treated like scum. I never had a good night kiss or any tenderness. The forced motherly hug, I got it from your grandma when I was 14, he said, slamming his fist on the table, remembering all those painful moments, and it was necessary to be angry now. He needed that push to continue his tale, otherwise he would never be able to continue. He needed that anger to keep in prison the forlorn child he had been, the one that couldn't cry and never received an ounce of love, down where he needed to stay, not to be overwhelmed by his desperate loneliness. Both of his boys winced. Albus looked desolate and moved his gaze to James, that was now deeply uneasy witnessing his father's distress. When I turned 11, I found out about my past. I found out that I was famous already. People were gaping at me and at my scar. And I was famous only because of a mother. The fourth year at Hogwarts, I made my fourth friend. My fourth! I never had one before. And that year, I've seen my parents for the first time in a mirror that showed that what we crave most. I didn't even know how they looked like before then. And I met Voldemort, stuck in the head of one of my teachers. I had to fight him for the first time, and I almost died. I was 11, more or less your age, Albus, just to make you appreciate how cool it can possibly be to die at 11, he said sourly. Second year, the Chamber of Secret had been opened. People were attacked by unknown. I could hear a voice nobody could, saying ghastly things. I thought I was going mad, and I found out I could speak parcel tongue. The whole school did, as a matter of fact, and everybody thought I was the one attacking people. Can you really speak parcel tongue? I heard the sixth year, Albus asked eager. But Harry interrupted him. It was vital to keep going. If he would have stopped there, if he would have stopped, there was the risk of not being able to start again. I don't know, Albus. I never tried again. So, after your Aunt Hermione had been attacked, I found out the voice I was hearing was the one of a basilisk. I entered the Chamber of Secret and I had to find a giant snake that could kill with the power of his eyes. And all of that watching your mom, who had been brought there by Voldemort as a bait, dying slowly under my very eyes, and being unable to save her. I miraculously managed to kill the snake, helped by a phoenix that blinded him. I was injured by his venomous fangs, however, and again, at 12, I was about to die together with your mom, forgotten down there. Phoenix tears healed me. I didn't read it anywhere. I experienced it. He admitted now under their son's scrutinizing eyes that were looking nowhere but him. It's not fun to realize you're about to die or to look somebody dying, he uttered bitterly. So then, third year, he continued Stem, resuming his walking about the room. I found out a killer, allegedly Death Eater, wanted to murder me. The mentors are scurrying like mad around the castle, making me faint every time I cross their path and forcing me to hear that ghastly scream every single time. Fun, innit? He said, shooting a dark look to them. I save you particulars, but I found out that the killer is my godfather. He was not a killer, really, but the whole world thought he was. We have been attacked by countless dementors, ready to suck our soul from our bodies, and I protected me and him, casting in Patronus that chased them away. I managed to make him flee, but with him, he went my only hope to leave the Dursley for a house where somebody, finally, would have cared about me. Fat chance, stuck at the Dursley. Fourth year. And he halted to stare right into their eyes. And here things really start to be fun and really cool, he said ironically. Before, it was just a joke compared to what is coming. Both James and Albus were astounded, gawking at him. So, fourth year, I got picked against my will for the Three Wizard tournament. I was 14, the other champs on 17. The whole school hated me, including my only friend, your Uncle Ron, because they thought I was a show-off. Under that weight, I got through my task, and just at the last one, when I thought everything was going to be over. He slowed his narrative, that until then was fast and agitated. He was getting to one of the most difficult parts to talk about. Almost all his nightmares derived straight from that traumatizing event. He took a big breath, running a hand in his hair. In his mind, all those images were tumbling up one after the other, just like in his dreams. He wasn't easy to talk about it, but he must. So he resumed his speech fast, hardly allowing himself the time to breathe, in the hope to get over as soon as possible. The cup was a porky. Me and Cedric touched at the same time. He brought us to a graveyard. He had been killed straight away. The second before alive, the next death. For no reason at all, if not being there by mistake. I've been tied to a tombstone and I had to witness Voldemort's resurrection. These, he said, showing James and Albus his right arm, where a long vertical scar was dividing his forearm in two, is where my blood has been taken to give him a body. And I can tell you that nothing, and marking the words slowly and carefully, he repeated, nothing you will ever see in your life will ever be as horrible, as terrifying, as utterly repulsive as Voldemort's resurrection. Nothing. James and Albus had their mouth open, aghast. He wanted to kill me, in front of all the Death Eater who were scornfully laughing at me. A 14-year-old boy with an injured leg, losing blood, without hope in the world. I knew I was about to die, but I didn't want to die like a coward. I confronted him, and due to some ancient wand magic, I managed to get away, bringing back Cedric's body. And there, shattered, out of my wits completely, injured and frantic, I had to confront the Dark Wizard who organized the whole thing. I was saved by sheer luck. And I found out that the minister didn't believe me. The school told me deranged because of an article that was written about me, and I was sent in that condition back to the Dursley, where I had the chance to meet the mentors again. He paused, having another big breath, and asking himself if he would have been able to get to the end of his tale. Fifth year. Nobody believed me. I was treated like a madman. At school, there was this evil teacher I told you about. The tough punishment I mentioned procured me this. And as he said, he showed them the scar on his hand where, I must not tell lies, could still be read quite clearly. She made me use a quill that carved words onto my skin instead of onto paper. And she forced me to do it for so long that I got this beautiful scar. Their sons exchanged each other a horrified look, but Harry was oblivious of it, lost in his state of that painful year. For the whole year, I could see straight into Voldemort's mind while he was killing, attacking, and torturing. I was keeping having alluring dreams that brought me straight into a trap. Because of my gullibility, I led all my friends to danger and my godfather to death. He was the closest thing to a parent I've ever got. Dead because of my stupidity. He reflected, pausing and resting his hands on the table, burdened by dark remembrance. By dark remembrance. Voldemort entered my mind that day. He wanted to force Dumbledore to kill him through me. It's not nice to have your mind broken in. You feel somehow violated, he said under his voice. But then, shaking off the uneasiness, continued. The good thing is that I managed to push him away, and the minister getting there at that moment saw him. I was cleared by the stigma of insanity. The magical community was warned finally. 6 year, he says, stretching his neck, starting to feel tired beyond belief. My last Hogwarts year. Last? James asked, surprised. Yes, last. I'm a dropout, James. He answered, staring hard at him, under which he lowered his. Dumbledore started to train me to fight Voldemort because in the meantime, I found out that he or me has to go. And obviously, hope to be me the one surviving despite we are speaking about a 16-year-old kid with scarce magical ability against a powerful dark wizard. Well, trying to keep panic under control, I started this fun journey in Voldemort's past and I found out why he didn't die when he tried to kill me and why he cannot die. How did he manage? Albus asked Tigger. That I cannot tell you. That secret was not going to be disclosed for any reason. That here, trying to neutralize Voldemort's protection, I witnessed Dumbledore's death, another person who was almost like a parent. Oh, incidentally, it happened soon after I almost been dragged in a lake by Inferi. James and Albus gaped. On a happier note, that here I got finally together with your mother. Albus sat up smiling. But I've been forced to break up with her just a few months later because I didn't want to endanger her. Albus' smile vanished quickly. From now on, I've seen so many people dear to me dying that there is no point doing a list. That here, me, your uncle Ron, and your aunt Hermione started our mission to neutralize all that made Voldemort immortal. It had been dreadful. We were continually endangered of death. The ministry had been taken over and we were hunted down like criminals. People were disappearing and being tortured. I had continually glimpses of it through my connection with Voldemort's mind. I was living in fear to discover that your mother was dead. We were alone and afraid, always on the move. This is another little present I got from those amazing years. And pronouncing the word sardonically, he took out swiftly his t-shirt where on his chest there was still the mark left by Horcrux. A powerful dark object that we had to always keep around our neck and influenced our minds viciously. Hermione had to sever it from my body when I was unconscious because it was trying to kill me. I returned to Hogwarts to fulfill my research. The final battle started to rage, a battle to which I didn't participate because I was still proceeding with my mission. People died to protect me while I was scurrying in the castle with very little hope to succeed. Well then, I finally came to the realization that the only obstacle to kill him was me. I had to die in order to make him mortal. He halted, remembering all the pain of that realization and all the longing for a life he had to abandon, the difficult choice he had been forced to take. I walked toward death without saying goodbye to anybody. I had to find the strength to walk toward what I knew he was my end. He said, his gaze lost in front of him, oblivious again of his sons with a horror-struck expression on their faces. I allowed him to hit me with the Avada, but as 16 years previously, I didn't die. And finally, after a life on the edge of death, I succeeded in finishing him off. Telling of his tale, he got back to himself and looked at James and Albus, still with their mouth half open. The silence fell in the room, grave and absolute. He broke it to say, all this, I told you, it hasn't been fun. It hasn't been an adventure. It was not amazing, he said severely, glaring straight into their eyes. He was scary and painful and deeply traumatizing, and I would have given anything not to have to go through it. But I never had any choice. You have no idea. For many years, I got horrifying nightmares with him coming back and killing your mother and later on you, he said, looking at James, because you were the dearest things I had. And when you were born, addressing Albus, he was the same. You have no idea how long it took me to be free of fears and nightmares, how long it took me to return to a normal life, which has never been really, because while I was trying with all my might to forget everything and leaving behind, everybody kept harassing me about it, wanting to have it told as if something entertaining instead of traumatizing, continually reminded and haunted by it. I'm persecuted daily by people who won't leave me alone to live my life, idealizing me and trying to use me for petty reasons. And what is really astounding in the whole of it, and I'm really proud of, it is not me defeating Voldemort that had just been a combination of some flukes of different kinds of elves from people more skilled and intelligent than me, but that despite all I went through, I succeeded in having a normal life, not going insane or paranoid. I married the woman I love, and I had you too, he said, pointing at them. He was revealing something that he had just realized. He resumed, almost under his voice, eviscerating for the first time this feeling which he knew Dumbledore would have been proud of. The most amazing thing is that I succeeded in not losing my ability to get attached to people in general, and you too, in particular. Despite I lost many people dear to me, and I'm aware that any of you could disappear any second from this world, I've been bold enough to care for you. It would have been safer not to do it anymore, to protect me from future pain, but I decided to find the courage to build up a family. He slumped on a chair, running his head in his hair, exhausted by the effect of all these confessions over him. He took the t-shirt from the floor and wore it back under the perturbed gaze of his sons. I was as scared as shit when you were born, James, he continued, looking fleetingly toward him, feeling uneasy and unsure in revealing that much. I was afraid to screw up. You were so small and needy, and I felt so unprepared. Probably I haven't been the best of fathers, but God knows I've tried. I was only 22 at the time. I was a kid raising a kid. But I've always cared for you with all myself. Perhaps I haven't been effusive on that respect and you perceive me as distant, but it's not the case. I know I've been a better father for Lily, and hopefully I'll be even better for the one who's about to come. I'm aware you got the short end of the stick. I'm sorry for it. But when you say that I don't care, that is utter rubbish. He concluded while smiling to his son, who was now looking away, but not out of scowl as before, but out of pure embarrass. He nodded feebly. Harry stood up, busying himself with the kettle, to let his son time to pull himself together and to do likewise. In the meanwhile, he could perceive Albus' gaze on his back, bursting with repressed longing of questioning him. When tea was ready, feeling more assured, he got back to his chair. So, he said cheerfully, as a prelude, blowing on his tea. Question time. You can ask me anything, and unless I've got a very good reason not to do so, I'll answer it. His sentence was barely at an end that Albus was already asking Inger, Is it true that you broke in a Gringle's vault and you escaped on the back of a dragon? Yes, it's true, he said, sniggering, amused by his eagerness. The dragon was imprisoned there as a defense, and he was almost blind, the poor beast. His answer was not finished yet, that another question was tumbling up. Is it true that you killed the basilisk with the Gryffindor sword? Yes, it is true. Is it true that you saved Angoran from mermaids in the Hogwarts Lake? Yes, it was one of the. Is it true that blimey Albus, let him bloody finish the sentence? James bellowed, nudging him hard. Sorry, he mumbled, he mumbled sheepishly, but Harry, sensing the trepidation, encouraged him. Go on. What were you about to ask? Is it true that you are an animagus you can transform in a hippogriff? Harry burst out laughing. A hippogriff? It'd be bloody fantastic. Unfortunately not, though. Who told you that? A guy in Hufflepuff, he replied coyly. James, profiting of the momentary silence, shooting a warning glass to Albus to avoid an interruption, asked Keen, Why was it necessary of your dying to finish you know who off? Harry hesitated a moment, not sure how much to reveal at first, but then he decided to enlighten his boys with this information to show his trust in them. I had a part of Voldemort's souls inside me. That had to go by his hand, otherwise it could never have been killed. It would have kept on living inside me. James and Albus gaped horrified. So you had, soul in. Albus gabbled and gulped, unable to finish the question. Yes, just a tiny bit though. And is it gone now? Albus asked, terrified. Yes, it is gone. Are you sure? Dead sure, he said, sipping his tea. Obviously, I'd be glad if you wouldn't go shouting around. It's very confidential what I told you. It must remain a secret, he added as a safe measure. James and Albus were silent for a moment, astounded by this piece of information. James, awaking from his dark reverie, determined, broke it. What happened during Christmas holiday when you have been alone with Mom? Harry raised his eyebrows and answered severely, That's between me and your mom. But then, in a fit of wickedness, he continued, Actually, now that I think of it, it's high time to explain you what happened. James was surprised. Really? What happened? We had sex. James and Albus reddened immediately to the roots of their hair. Generally, that's how people make children, he continued, amused by their faces. And the time is come to have a serious conversation about it. James sprang from his chair and bolted to the door, but Harry had been quicker. He took out his wand and with a click could be heard. The door was now locked. James grasped the knob. James grasped the knob, trying to turn it frantically. Dad, please open the door! I know everything already! He begged, flashing madly. Let's see how much you know, he said, smiling, absolutely unmoved by his begging. We might even find out that you know more than I do. And that was the end of chapter 41. I hope you like it. I struggled very much reading properly. Sometimes I messed up, I'm sorry, but it was very long and very taxing for me, especially at all Aries part where he's talking. Um, when I wrote it, I was very insecure on how to put it down because I wanted basically to tell Harry's story by his point of view. So, like, not like an adventure and not like something fun, as it kind of transpired from the seven books, because obviously they are a fantasy book, an adventure book. But I wanted to explore how traumatizing could be for a guy, for a child, to live through all of it. Super well done. How thank you, Marco. So yeah, he had to speak a lot. He had to tell everything, and I was a bit scared that it could be a bit boring to hear it everything again. So I tried to cut what I could, but it still came out super long. So I hope it is clear the reason why I've done so, and it kind of transpire all the struggles of his life, how all those events were not fun at all. And yeah, I wanted to kind of underline how for everybody else it sounds amazing, all the adventure he had, but how actually it wasn't amazing at all. So yeah, I hope I managed, and I wanted it to be intense, but I tried to put like an happier tone in the end when he does the question time, and I was so eager to know about all this stuff. He never was allowed to ask. And about the sex thing in the end, because I don't know if you remember, but at the beginning of the book there was a lot of this talking about Harry undecided if he had to talk about sex with the kids, if they were old enough, if it was his role as a father. And I thought, okay, that's the moment. They are cozy. They are all together. Let's break how can I say, the serious moment with something a bit silly. So yeah, that was all. I hope you like it, guys. I hope it wasn't too boring. And yeah, so next week we will have 3 chapters, and to counterbalance to those very intense ones, they're going to be a bit lighter and a bit more cheerful. We will see what they're going to try to do to mend the Fidelius charm broken on their house, and what Harry is going to do to try to make the oh my gosh, to heal the breach he has got with James. So yeah, that was all. I guess I'm gonna wish you good night, and I thank you to have been here like usual. And we'll see each other hopefully next week on Thursday at 9 o'clock here. Good night, guys.